About a month has passed since the release of Honkai Star Rail. I finished mostly everything, and I believe the game has moved past its honeymoon phase. It's time to put away the rose-tinted glasses and see the game for what it really is. Welcome to Honkai Star Rail 1 month later. Now before we begin, I'd like to list the pros and cons of the game from the get-go. We'll start with the pros first. Beautiful graphics, amazing soundtrack, booba, engaging turn-based combat, decent story, entertaining characters, and as for the cons, at its core, it's a gacha game. Story pacing problems, gated progression, content drought, and relics. I'll be breaking down those points one by one in the next segment, so if you don't want to hear me rant, it's a good time to click off the video now. But if you choose to stay and hear what a gacha degenerate have to say, let's plunge inside this foxhole. Little disclaimer though, I'm by no means a critic, so I'm not gonna get into the nitty gritty of it. Also, you might hear many comparisons to Genshin throughout this review, so bear with me. I think we're all aware how beautiful hoyoverse games always look. There's always so much happening in the background and so many minute details that just feels like a when you see it moment. See, there's so much going on in the background of Xianzhou Luofu. The point is, Hoyo makes gacha games with graphical integrity similar to AAA games. It's crazy. Not really much to comment on here, the game really does look great overall. I feel like Hoyo can never go wrong with their OSTs. I think the soundtrack and Star Rail just tops Genshin in every way, at least for me. The title screen music really gives me chills. They nailed it yet again, with the regional soundtracks too, which is just a perfect fit for each planet's identity. The jazzy undertones for the space station, the wintry wasteland feel for Belobok, and that freaking drop on a certain boss fight.
Power of the Stellaron is with me!
Oh my god! And the best part is always when they use Chinese instrumentals. Now this is the part that turned most people off, because it's not action. Now I might be biased in this, because if there's two things that I love in the game, it's strategic turn-based battles and gambling. Alright, Tails never fails. Fuck! Now people's perception of turn-based combat were I go, he goes, then I go, then sit through animations. Surprisingly, the turn-based combat of Star Rail is actually quite involved. See, because you can use your ultimate whenever it's ready as a mechanic, this allows you to strategically interrupt turn orders, actively requiring player input, and sometimes can be the difference in winning and losing. Let's say the enemy hits you with a big attack, and next in the turn order you see two enemies' turns coming up. Your healer gets hit and feels that slight bit of energy needed to cast their ultimate. You spam the hell out of that ult button for a clutch heal, or you can activate your DPS's ult to kill that one enemy so it doesn't have a turn. The point is the same. I even started on the simulated universe path resonance that you can also activate whenever it's ready regardless of turn order. And not to mention, some path resonance can give you shields or grant your DPS extra turns, making a deceptively interactive turn-based combat. I think the story has been pretty good so far. It's feeling much less convoluted, and a lot of the plot points can be delivered without info dumps. Unlike Genshin's recent style of writing, that makes us go through a rigmarole of NPC carousel before it can successfully convey one relevant plot point to us. For example, the two irrelevant scholar at the beginning of the Wanderer Bird Archon quest forcing us to read an essay which I immediately closed. But that's beside the point. The story has a great hook, not that hook, and it's kept me entertained so far, especially in the Xianzhou Luofu, where the story seems to pick up regarding the Stellaron hunters and the real enemies and all that. But honestly, the story could be better. More on that later. Honestly, the characters might be Honkai Star Rail's strongest point. From how amazingly detailed the character design is, how pretty their outfits are, with some giving rise to skills I never knew I had, to how entertaining it is watching them interact with the other characters. From how different Clara's footstep is from the other characters because she's bare feet, to how enamored the Trailblazer is with trash cans. Seriously, there are so many entertaining secret interactions and Easter eggs in the area you explore, making the world feel more alive overall than an empty, large open world. Now that we got the sweet out of the way, we go into what I think are the game's problems, which a lot of people might disagree. At its core, Honkai Star Rail is a gacha game, a free game where you can spend money in microtransactions to either gacha for characters and like cones, or help speed along your progression. Unlike other games where you pay up front and you already have a full game, this does not apply to modern AAA gaming, by the way. The team setup you get in Star Rail is dependent on your luck or how much money you spend. Of course, there's always the option to go F2P, but theoretically, if you get unlucky with your gacha or stuck with your progression, the prospect of spending money might be a bit tempting. As fun as the story in Star Rail is, it still runs into a rather concerning pacing problem. For example, the entirety of the Belobog arc seems like padding. As soon as you got to Xianzhou, Belobog just feels like an afterthought, except for maybe a few references where March is traumatized by hotels. Also in Xianzhou, the whole thing with Sanctus Medicus was 100% padding. Though interesting, it really detracted us from the main goal. Heck, the whole questline didn't involve the other characters, just the Trailblazer and a bunch of NPCs. It's a good thing they're rumored to be removed from the main story as of version 1.1 and made their own questline. I just fear that, in the future, Star Rail's story might be following the same pattern as Genshin Impact, which takes forever to get to the point with tons of filler in the main story quest. But for now, I'll just be cautiously optimistic about it. It's not super noticeable early on, but progression really stagnates when you reach Equilibrium level 3. The amount of materials needed for traces and the relic farming you need to do is insane. Not to mention, you are gated by your Trailblaze power, which recharges 1 every 6 minutes, making progression extremely slow. The only way to bypass this is to either use fuel to refill your Trailblaze power, which the game gives you a few for free, and once you run out, you are forced to either wait it out or pay with Stellar Jades to refill your power, which is not really recommended as Stellar Jades are precious gacha resources, especially for F2Ps. To be honest, I'm not exactly surprised, considering Genshin Impact did the same thing. There's no reason to do it again in Star Rail, but Hoyo's gotta make bank, I guess. So players who have played this game from day one may have already reached the end of the content with nothing else to do, with some very dedicated players finishing everything including the achievements within a week. I took my time with the game, I really did, but I still managed to finish most of the major quests when the Jingyuan banner dropped. And now I have nothing to do for the next half a month. The update every 6 weeks seems a little too slow, and there seems to be a gaping wide dead period when you're really just waiting for the next version update. I don't know, maybe I'm just asking for too much, can't rush perfection and all that, but since Genshin is also the same way, I feel like a few alarm bells going off in my head that Star Rail is gonna go down the same path as Genshin, where every update is the same pattern over and over again, with tons of dead period where there's just absolutely nothing to do. I know that other gacha games do have their dead period sometimes, but I feel like Hoyo games is especially bad. Maybe it's just me, but 20 plus days of doing nothing but farming relics doesn't seem like very engaging gameplay to me. Oh boy. I don't think it takes a lot of explaining of how seriously unfun relic RNG is. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much the same as artifacts in Genshin. And here it's even worse, because you have 6 pieces of relics instead of 5. I think this soul-crushing RNG on relics is easily the biggest bottleneck in the game's progression system. Yeah, sure, they added a quality of life change where you can synthesize a relic part of your choosing at the cost of salvaging 10 5-star relics. And there's also something called self-modeling resin, a single-use item to synthesize a relic part with the main stat of your choice. But it's all still insanely RNG reliant. As for the former, you need to deal with both random main stat and substat if you're making any part other than the head and the gloves. And for the latter, you still need to contend with substat RNG with substat upgrade RNG. Relics are just really not fun to deal with. Now that we went through everything, we can finally decide, was it actually good or just hype? I can say with certainty that I'm enjoying myself playing Honkai Star Rail, more so than Genshin. However, my biggest complaint of an overall stunning game is the heavily gated progression and a storytelling style that is eerily inching closer and closer to Genshin's. Too much padding with little substance, and it's just the beginning. But it is Honkai, and the Honkai series is Hoyo's crowning achievement in terms of storytelling. So I guess we'll see where this is going. So all in all, I will give Honkai Star Rail a rating of out of 10. It is actually good, despite the many problems it has. It doesn't really detract from an overall enjoyable experience. Hey, you made it to the end of the video! You're a real gigachat for listening to a loser spout a bunch of nonsense, so I really can't thank you enough. If you found the video entertaining, go ahead and leave a like, and subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.